We are beginning chapter 2, and I know that at the end of the last chapter I said that we would begin with the animals in the next chapter, but I gave this section a gloss, and there's so much going on in this area that I decided to take the bull by the horns and create a chapter that I hadn't intended, and we'll go into this area in some detail. So I'm going to do a recap on the craft that we've already discussed, but we want to look at this area, this area, this area. There's another craft parked here. We want to pay some attention to this, and there's an object here. We're going to take a look at the area behind this craft. We're going to pay some attention to the area above the craft, and we're going to begin below the craft down here. Some really amazing things. So let's get started. This is the area directly below the rotting derelict, and you can see that there are many forms. So I'll enlarge this and we'll go around and pick out the forms, and then we'll concentrate on the Martians. You can see that there's a very long form. It's all the way back and up. There's a separate form here. There's a form here with a ceremonial creature head. There's a form here. There's another form here with a ceremonial creature head. There's a separate piece of material. And then down in this corner, this may be a craft, I don't know, but there's a form here. There's a form of dark metal here, which is certainly a craft. There's a form here, and perched on top of it is a small flyer. And we've seen these types of craft before, and there's the pilot right there. Now between this form and this small submarine-shaped form, there's another form right in here, catching a bit of sunlight, and that separates it from this craft. And then next to it is this submarine shape, and the hatch is coil-shaped, and there's the helmet of a Martian right there. And as we come over, we have one Martian here, although there may be several on his left. But there's one here. You can see the helmet, shoulders down to mid-back. There's another here. There's a helmet, and you can see the shoulders. And there's another here. See the helmet and the back, down to the mid-back. There's another here. He seems to have his arms raised. Helmet, green back. Now, we'll start in the upper right corner, and we'll work our way forward. This is probably a Martian here. Helmet, dark top, gray pants. But let's look at a close-up of this section here. Now, before I make this larger, you can see a Martian right here. Head, dark top, gray pants. Another here. Head, dark top, gray pants. Another here. Head, dark top, gray pants. There's a Martian here that is not wearing dark top and gray pants. And then there's a Martian in this craft, in this flyer. There's a Martian, head, dark top, gray pants. And there seems to be a group here. So there may be another flyer, or they're standing on some surface behind this object. Now we have an object here, and this is probably a helmet and shoulders of another Martian, and it seems to continue down here, and perhaps here. You can see a helmet right here, and another Martian. And there's a large sphere here, I think too large to be a helmet. But I'll make this larger, and you can see head, black top, gray pants. Head, black top, gray pants. Black top, gray pants. Head, black top, gray pants. And you can see the flyer. You can see there's a metallic form here. You can see the large metallic form in the back. And the Martians. Now we're going to come forward. You can see a form here. There's a Martian right here. You can see the helmet and bare shoulders down to the middle of the chest here. Here we have a Martian on his forearms and knees, a rust-colored top, a white helmet, naked from the waist down. There seems to be another separate object here, but right here there's a taxi or a ferry, however you want to characterize this type of craft. But here's the pilot, and here is the group of his passengers. They're going to step off the back end. So they're about to disembark from this craft. In back of it, there's another flyer. And you can see the heads of Martians in this flyer. I'm going to do a recap of this area, and then we'll finish up with the central portion, and then we'll go back and concentrate on some Martians. We looked at this at the end of the last chapter. It's a double structure, and there's a big-headed, big-eyed Martian here. Next to him there's the helmet of another Martian, and behind him is the head, neck, shoulders, and upper back of another Martian dressed in a light violet or magenta uniform. This structure, this portion ends about here, and then there's another section. Now we can see a face here on the front of this portion. Big eyes, alien nose, cheeks, mouth, contorted in a grimace. There's a sphere, and a sphere. We have this leaf-shaped structure, and right down here there are Martians. They're dark figures. There's three. There's one here, head and shoulders, head and shoulders, head, shoulders, and a portion of the left arm. Now, this section is cut off along this vertical, and I think this is another one of those holographic screens. In this lower section, there's a portion of a face, which I think of as an evil cherub. Large forehead, eyes, pug nose, chubby cheeks, and a mouth. And this figure also appears to have external ears. Now here we have another double structure, which is why I wanted to cover this one first. One portion ends here, and then there's the second portion here. Now, we have the head of a big-eyed Martian here. There are two here, the right head partially eclipsing the left head. We had a face here, and there are more faces. There's one here in color. There's also something vertical here. There's a face here, an alien face, large eyes, nose, cheeks, mouth, chin, forehead. And there's a face here, also alien. Big eyes, nose, forehead, cheeks puffed out, and round mouth blowing. So this is a representation, perhaps, of an alien wind god. Now, if you look along the top edge of this craft, you'll see a long row of green helmets, suggesting that there are Martians standing on the other side of this craft. And on this side of the craft, we have two groups. The first group has helmets just like these. You see the green helmets. Now this one is questionable whether or not she's wearing a green helmet. It seems to be female. She's wearing orange. She's holding a light in her left hand, and that light is illuminating the surface that they're standing on. Standing next to her, now the next three are all wearing green helmets. The one immediately next to her is wearing red. The one next to that one You can just see a bit of her shoulder. She's wearing violet. And then the last one in the green helmets is dressed in light violet or magenta, and she's facing the right. And then the next group, we have 2 or 3 very tall Martians and one short one. This is not, without doubt, this is a juvenile. And this seems to be a different species, perhaps, than these, because the adults are considerably taller and they're dressed differently. These are dressed in robes and they're all the same color. They're, I guess, a light violet, and they seem to be wearing black boots. Now over here we have, again, we have 2 groups. There's a dark mass here that doesn't resolve to anything. And we have 2 or 3 Martians on the left of that dark mass, and we have several on the right of that dark mass. Now this is probably the easiest one to see here. You can see head, dark top, gray pants, and perhaps the ground is illuminated where he is walking also. Then you see the dark tops and gray pants. There are 2 here. There's one clear figure here. Well, I say clear, it's fuzzy, but it's easily made out. Head, upper body, gray pants, although it's fuzzy. And next to him, there's a figure, 1 or 2 figures dressed in dark blue-green, and you can see the head here. And maybe another head next to his. This is the section immediately to the right of the section that we were just looking at. We've got a leaner here. There's a Martian here that I'll show you in a moment. But we really need to pay some attention to this section here. Now here it is, a little bit larger. Here's the broken end. Right here, there's a figure. And I'll show you that figure. Here's the head, neck, shoulders, back, buttocks, weight-bearing leg, thigh, lower leg, foot. And he's stepping up onto this area right here. And in this area, there appears to be a group of Martians. We have a pipe. We have another pipe. And there's an object in the water. Now this is slightly enhanced, but here you can see the one that's stepping up. Head, shoulders, back, buttocks, weight-bearing leg, thigh, lower leg. You can even see the foot. This appears to be a collection of Martians, all wearing helmets. There's another figure down here. This may be a Martian, or maybe 2 Martians. Got a sphere here. This object right here, you can see that it has bands or coils. Very strange top. I I think this may be a pump connected to the pipe leading into the water. And there's a rectilinear section here. We have a collection of spheres right here. There's also a Martian in here, and I want to take a look at that now. Here's that section thrown up. And you should be able to make this out without my making this any larger. Got the head, neck, shoulders, back, and you can see a little bit of the right leg. There's the bottom, and you can see the left leg. I think you can see all of the left leg. He's wearing green. Left arm, and a little bit of the right arm. There's the hand. There's the arm. And he seems to be striking the right side of this one's neck. Got a sphere. We've got this very strange object with gold bit to it. This reminds me of another object that we'll get to when we go across the river. Now, the most startling aspect of this image is right in here. And I'll show you a blow-up of this. Got a whole group of Martians. Some are farther in the back. And then we've got this group closer to the camera. You can see the helmets. You can see the individual bodies. There's one here dressed in blue. But the most interesting is this guy right here. And I think perhaps they may have been discussing curiosity. And it baffles me why the Martians have decided to leave the rovers unmolested. Because the Martians, at least the ones in the vicinity of Phobos, appear to have taken out one of the Russian craft. And yet on the surface of the planet they leave the rovers unmolested. Well, this guy decided that he didn't like curiosity. So he swung around. He swung his right hip around. His weight is basically on his left leg. He's dropped his left shoulder. Here's his right leg. In his right arm, he's holding a weapon. And you can see a puff of smoke from the weapon. And if this is like an ordinary handgun on Earth, the muzzle would be about here. And he appears to have fired directly at curiosity. Fortunately, he didn't hit the camera. But this is the most startling Martian that we will encounter in this entire series. I call him 007. So, to wrap up, I have no idea what this object is. It's a very wonderful object. We have a leaner here. And it's instructive to compare the size of this to these Martian. The size of this in comparison to the structures down here is quite large. That'll conclude this section, and now we can go across the river. This sculpture is up and to the right in relation to the rotting derelict. We clearly have a face and a large metal plate shoved into the mouth. So whoever this sculpture represents, whether it was a ruler or a philosopher or a religious leader, he said something that some group took exception to, and using their technology, they shoved this very large metal plate into the mouth as a sign of repudiation. Now, we may have figures here, and it looks like there may be a group, quite a group down here, half a dozen maybe. And they're very indistinct, but there appears to be a group here dressed in green. We have two large spheres here, and this, which is reminiscent of a gonzo, but this doesn't look like a feeding tube, so I don't know what this is, but it's not part of the sculpture itself. Now, there's a second face here, eyes and a mouth, but the nose is covered by an object that was parked right across the nose and partly on the other face. We may also have faces here. These appear to be two smaller faces. We have the two lovers. They're embracing and they're kissing. So here we have the first kiss of two Martians. And I'd say that that was a pretty historic moment. We've got a sphere here, which is either a device or the helmet of another Martian. And up here, there's a figure here, and there's a figure here, and there may be another figure here. But this, you should be able to recognize this by now. This is another flyer. There's the nose. And we've seen quite a few of these already. Particularly if you saw the introduction. We're racking up quite a total of these things. So we have something here, a figure in red. There's a figure here, appears to be green. And there's perhaps an object here. Another sphere here. And I think the other stuff in this image is too indistinct to identify. There's also a dark object right here. No idea what that is. And there's some color in here also. And we may have something. There may be some figures along here, but we're really at the limit of resolution here. A circle here, a figure here, the neck, shoulders, back, and bottom, up and to the right from the rotting derelict. There are two objects. We've looked at one of them. We'll look at the other later. But there's also this area that I call the panel. And from a distance, this looks more or less flat. But you can see that when we get closer to it, there's quite a bit of structure here. Now there's a craft here. There's an object here, which I assume is a craft. We have this here. So let's enlarge this. Now here you can see the metallic nature of this craft. It's very smooth. We have this object here. The back end of it is hidden in an opening. Appears to be another opening here. There appears to be another object here. But if you notice, there's a face here. Eyes, nose, mouth. Looks like a face done by an impressionist. And it wouldn't surprise me if there were other faces in here. And this is also metallic. And I'm not sure what to make of this. Is this some sort of energy discharge from the nose of this craft? This section is above and to the left of the rotting derelict. And you notice there's a craft here. There's another object here. There's another object in the back. There's a metallic dome. And we'll see many of these. I may not always point these out, but there are many of these along the river. Now this section is also quite interesting. Notice the spherical sections on the side. There appears to be a sheltered entrance here. And I think of this as the citadel. Now, there's another object right here, sitting on top of this thing. And it wouldn't surprise me if this was a craft in its own right, disguised. It's quite odd for a geological feature. And notice up in the back, there's another one here. There's something else here also. There seems to be a parking area. It's like wherever there's space, they have something parked. There's an object right here. Now, very interesting in the background, there's a perfect R here. And below it, there's a perfect B. Uppercase Latin letters. I don't know what to make of that. These are not the only Latin letters that we're going to encounter. But it could be, I read somewhere that there are only so many symbols that you can write. And so that just by the laws of probability, you might find letters that appear to be Latin in other languages. So make of this what you will. Just seems kind of odd to me. I mean, an R, one letter is one thing, but two perfect Latin letters together seems to defy the laws of probability. This is the section immediately above the rotting derelict. And we looked at this terraced structure earlier, and it appears to be perhaps a building. And the whole roof is pretty well flat, and there are craft parked along here. If you look, there are craft everywhere. We'll take a look at this section later. We'll look at that separately later. But look at these. There are many craft. Just look for metallic forms. They're everywhere. There's metal everywhere. Yeah, you can see forms in here. So I think this version is a little clearer actually than the last one. This is a very characteristic shape right here. We'll see many of these. Now, we have an object here that we'll look at separately. Here's another one of those metal dome-like structures. And there appears to be something behind it also, same color. But look at this. There's a craft right here. There's an object here. Something here. And an object alongside it. Something here. See all of this stuff? Now, we have an object here with something coming up. In fact, it seems to continue. Then we've got a separate object here. And this is kind of wing-shaped. I'm not saying it's a wing, but this is not a dome. It's flattened, and the base is farther from the camera than the tip. So this comes up and leans toward the camera. So this is a part of something. And then look at the perfectly regular shape of this dome. It's a perfect curve. And it's highly reflective. It's either highly reflective or it's emitting light, one or the other. We have something similar right here, either highly reflective or emitting light. Now I've got one more. It's pretty much the same as this one, but we'll take a look at it. And I don't know if this is an improvement. But you can see the jumble of material. You can see all of these metallic forms. Now this is the upper corner of this building-like structure. I think this is probably a building of some sort. And these objects are parked in one corner on the roof. The Martians seem to sometimes park rather haphazardly. There's a depiction of a flying craft or a comet. We have images like this in medieval art. There are creatures. This is the clearest one here. They appear to be sea creatures emblazoned on the side of it. And there are symbols here. Now beginning here, there's a craft, a flying craft. I've shown you these before. You can see that this has at least one Martian in it. And this may actually be in flight. There's a coil-like object here. No idea what it is. Could be another flyer. A couple of Martians right here. And there's an object here. Behind this, there's another object. And this could be another flyer, another fairy type flyer, because there are Martians in it. These appear to have just disembarked or stepped off the back end of it. And if you look carefully up here, there's a whole group of Martians proceeding off into the distance here. There are a lot of Martians. And there's one right here, which is very clear. And we'll take another look at that in just a moment. There's another fairy type craft right here. And you can see Martians disembarking. And this is probably the pilot here. And this is probably the helmet of another Martian. There's a Martian here. And often wherever there's one, there are many others. There may be a cluster here. So, before we take a closer look at this, let's look up here. There's a structure. This face is on a slant. Then there's a flat, which also slants down somewhat. And then this face is also slanted backwards slightly. But here we have openings. So this is some kind of a building. And if you look, there's a spidery framework here. And down here there appears to be at least two enclosures. There's an object parked here, which is probably a craft or a vehicle. And there's an object right here, which seems to be a flying craft. Now, Let's look at this in close-up. Okay, here we are. Somewhat bright. You notice that there's a Martian here. Can you see this? Right here. It's the helmet and a kind of a pink outfit. This appears to be female. But you can see that there are other Martians. This is part of that procession leading off into the distance. And there's another Martian right down here, standing right behind this flying craft. Now, what we want to notice about this craft is that it has a raised dome, and you can actually see the windows in this section. And then we have this curve, probably comes down like this, and curves down in the back. And this is a sombrero-shaped flying craft. And these have been described in the literature. There also appears to be a Martian here dressed in green. So we have a group right here, 1, 2, and 3, that are very, very clear. Now, having taken note of the shape of this craft, we're going to look at another one. Now here we have a parked flying craft. Now we have a sombrero craft. You notice the dome raised above the body, so the windows are in here. And we have a platform. So this looks like a regular parking place for this craft. Here, there's an object made of pipe. It has parallel arms and these bends that meet at a point. It's clearly manufactured. Here, we have another object made of pipe. This end is either open or capped. And here there's a spherical join. Now we have a craft here. There are 2 Martians seated. Right here. And apparently this is where the craft is flown from. I don't believe they're standing in a hatch. I think they're seated. So this is kind of a cockpit. We have 2 Martians right here. These are very easy to see. The head, the back, the head, there's a shoulder, there's the left arm, and there's the left side, and the back. Now there's a figure here, which may be a Martian working on this craft. And we have, if it is, these are his head and shoulders. Now, we may have the head of a Martian here. We may have the helmet of a Martian here. And then along these verticals, you notice that there's a disruption in the image. I believe this is another holographic screen. And there's an image, I think, of a Martian here on the screen. There may be another here, head and shoulders. And there might even be a third dressed in green, head and the body down to about the hips. But these are not actually there on the ground. This is just a holographic image as far as I can tell. Now in the back we see uniform colors. So there's a group of Martians here, out of focus. And then we have these. And I believe these are doorways. I think this is an opening. And you can see further into the opening. It goes back. So these are actual structures. They're not just something stuck on the outside. These are actually kind of A-frame entryways into the side of the mountain. Now we have another image to look at. And this is interesting also. We have a shape. This is a pyramid. Looks like there's a slight change of angle here. Looks like there's a face here. The top of the pyramid is cut off. And right here, there's a metal shelf on an angle. And parked on that shelf, there's a craft. And above that craft, there's another craft right here. And there's another metallic object here. And there's something here also. And there's something here also. So we've got a lot of objects here. What they are is anybody's guess. And sometime I would like to spend more time on this image, but we have a lot of material to cover, so I'm not going to spend any more time on this right now. So let's move on. Now this is the area directly behind or to the right of the rotting derelict. And you can see that there's a craft here. You can see a metallic object here. There's another one here. Here. See, just wherever we look, we find these things. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We're going to wrap up this chapter here. But I just wanted to show you that all around that rotting derelict, there are craft and Martians. And a Martian right here. Probably another one here. And I think I pointed these out earlier. Probably another one here. There's one here for sure. This one is easy to see right here. And this may be female. So this is going to wrap up chapter 2.